But what I really want to talk about is the fact that, did you know your soap could be illegal? Now, I don't sell my soap when I make it. I only make it for my own use. We're going to make some cold press soap, but we're also going to make some melt and pour soap. What I've got going on here is some olive oil. There's 485 grams of olive oil because I want this to be quite a nice moisturising soap for my family. What else I've got is I've got 178 grams of this solid coconut oil that I'm also going to put in there, already measured out. And I've also got 117 grams of this cocoa butter that really smells beautiful. It smells so lovely. I'm going to eat it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to let that gently just melt in there on a lowish heat. And actually making your own cold press soap is really easy to do. The only thing is you do need to make it in advance because it needs to cure up for about 6 weeks before you use it. But you need to have a lye mixture to turn it into soap. And this is where it's really important to wear some safety equipment when you're mixing that up. Now, I've got gloves here because I don't want to get it on my hands because it is caustic. And I've also got eye protection here because the last thing I want to do is splash any in my eyes. Now, I might as well make that up or mix that up while this is melting and doing its little thing. The other thing is you should always add your powdered lye to the water, not the water to the lye. I'm using distilled water because the water in our area is so hard. Honestly, I'm surprised it doesn't give you a black eye when you're washing your face with it. So I need 150 grams of water. To that, I need to add 108 grams of caustic soda. I'm going to measure that out first in a little cup. My ones are in, you can get flakes, but this one's in balls. And then when you add this to the water, it is going to get the water quite warm. So you need to set it aside for a little period of time. And I like to add some into the water and then give it a mix. And work in a well-ventilated area as well. Then I like to add a little bit more. I've got my extractor fan on. And give that a mix. And then I add the rest in and just give that a mix until it's all fully dissolved. Using these chemicals, as long as you're safe and sensible, then you're going to be absolutely fine. PPE is a must. Oh, that has got lovely and warm now. How I like to work is I like to have all my ingredients ready, weighed out and measured out. I can just put everything together when I need to. I haven't got to worry then about anything. So we can put that now to one side, clean up any splashes, and then with our other spatula, just give our oil and our solids a little mix until they're all beautifully blended in. And I've got this on a fairly low to middle heat. We don't want this boiling. We don't want this too hot. I forgot to push record, so I poured my lye in and I've been blending this for about a minute. And my reason it's got some bubbles on the top is because I actually could have done with using a smaller pan. Now, I poured this in when it was just above room temperature, really warm, but not uncomfortably warm. And the reason I'm blending it is to emulsify the lye in with the oils. And this will then create a nice trace and thicken up beautifully. No, we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. I can feel it's thickened up. Well, this is the serious bit. As I mentioned earlier, there's some really important legal obligations that you need to consider to ensure you're doing everything safely and complying with the laws and the regulations that are out there. Because the last thing you want, and I want really, is for you to get yourself into any trouble through selling a product that could get you into a hot soapy mess. Pun intended there. Now, I'm no lawyer, but I have done a lot of research around this, and it is important to ensure that wherever you live, that you check into the situation so you know exactly what you can and can't do when selling homemade soap. In the UK, homemade soap falls under the European Union's cosmetic regulations, and these require that your product is safe and properly labelled. But it also means that you must make sure that your soap doesn't contain any banned substances and that you have your product tested by a certified laboratory to ensure its safety. Once your soap passes the safety test, the laboratory will issue you a certificate of compliance, and then all you'll need to do is include a list of ingredients and a warning for any potential allergens on your label. And it's well worth getting your soap certified in the UK if you intend to sell it, or you set yourself up as a soap making business, although this can be expensive, with costs ranging from a few £100 to a few £1,000s. The other thing is, when you do this, you also have to get a certificate for every recipe you make using the soap. And once it's certified, you can't make any changes to that recipe. Even the colour or adding a different fragrance requires you to have a separate certificate. I strongly believe that having your soap certified is essential for ensuring not only the safety of your product and the safety of the people you're selling it to, but it will also build trust with your customers, so they know they are dealing with and buying from someone who cares about their well-being and their business. Things are a little different in the USA to the UK. In the USA, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, regulates soap products. And what they require is that your soap is safe for your customers to use, quite rightly, and that it is properly labelled with a list of ingredients. Unlike some other products, you don't need to get approval from the FDA before you sell your soap. You'll still need to ensure your soap is safe for consumers to use by using ingredients that are generally recognised as safe, GRAS. When labelling your soap in the USA, you'll need to include a list of ingredients in descending order of predominance, the net quantity of your contents, your company or brand name, and your business address. And if you make any claims whatsoever about your soap's effects, such as being antibacterial or moisturising or anything like that, you'll need to have evidence to support those claims. And this then can be considered as a drug. In addition, if your soap contains any drug ingredients, such as salicylic acid, it may be considered a drug and subject to additional regulations. But what is really important to remember is that regulations change, so you must be on top of this all the time and ensure you do your own research and then comply with any regulations in your country you're selling the soap. It's always going to be your responsibility to ensure you're current in meeting those legal requirements. So get started, get certified if you're in the UK, and start selling your amazing creations. Or if you're like me and just like making soap, then make it for your own use. So that's now at that kind of thick stage, and this is where I want to add in my scented oils, and I'm using tea tree oil for this, and I measured out just 2 ounces of oil, which is odd considering I'm working in grams, but there we go. And now I'll blend that in, and sometimes putting the oil in also allows it to thicken up a little bit quicker as well. So this is quite a nice trace now going on here. Can you see when I lay that on there, it's keeping its shape? Now I've got a silicone preformed mould here. All I'm doing is pouring that into there, and then I'll go around with a spatula, get out all the last remaining bits of the soap, and I'll give it a bit of a shake, bit of a tap, because that way it will get rid of any trapped bubbles that are in there. And then all I do is I cover that and put it somewhere warmish. Don't want it somewhere cold, to let it solidify. And then once it's solidified, I'll show you what else to do with it. So for the melt and pour, I like to do it in a double boiler like this to melt it, purely because I find that's the easiest way. What I want to do is have different colours and some different smells to it. So all I do is I cut a bit off it like that. And this is clean. I give this a really good clean before I started making my soap today. And then I cut it up into much smaller pieces. And if you don't have a knife like this, a normal knife should cut through this quite well, but just be careful not to cut yourself. And then I pop in my soap into my double boiler like that, and then I'll let that melt. It doesn't actually take too long to melt. And then while that's melting, I've got my colours that I got online just to add to it, and I've got all my tiny little moulds ready to pour this in. And the great thing about this is, as soon as it's set, leave it an hour or two and you can use it. It's ready to be used as soap. As you can see, this has been in there about a minute now, and it is starting to melt and go like a liquid. You can do this in the microwave if you wish. I've also made sure that my moulds are lovely and clean prior to using them. I leave them in a boiling water, as they're silicone, it's not going to hurt them at all, for a couple of minutes, just to make sure that they're all nice and clean. Okay, so that's all melted now. Didn't take long, only took about 3 or 4 minutes. And I'm going to push that to one side. Ready? Now this has got a flat base, so this works really well. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of colour into this now, and that will colour it up. I don't want to add too much. As you can see, that's giving it a nice colour. I should measure out my scent, but because this is all for me, it doesn't really matter. So I put what I think is enough in there. And this is a lime and basil mandarin. Oh my goodness, it does smell beautiful. Now you want to do this fairly quickly because, you know, it will start to set up again. I've got my moulds ready to pour in, and I've also got some spare ones available if I haven't got enough here. for this. Pour it into your moulds. Yeah, I have got enough. Look, that's fine. And I'll even get one of those out of it as well. And now I've got some bubbles on the top, and it's a bit like resin actually in a way. You can go around with a long neck lighter and just get rid of the majority of those bubbles so they're not there and spoiling the look of your soap. But the same applies to this as well. If you're making this sort of soap as you're making the cold press soap, anything like this, you have to make sure that you're abiding by the law if you're going to be selling it. I'm not sure about giving it away and using it, but certainly if you're going to be selling it. Well, these are all now set solid. And you know, it smells lovely in here. My son just came in here a little while ago and said, Dad, it smells ever so funky in here. And they'll now demold really easily, leaving the pattern behind. I will link everything that I've used today in the description below, so don't worry if you want to get hold of it. And then once I've demolded them, I then leave them for about another hour just to set up first completely before I wrap them ready to store and use. What I'll do is to store these, all I do is I take a little bit of wax paper like that, I wrap them up. And I have found that that is ample enough to keep them stored. And I have stored these when I make soap for well over a year in the cupboard. And as I need one, I just take one out and then use it. This has gone hard overnight. And all I need to do now is to take this out and then cut it up. I'm using a crinkle cut cutter and then deciding what sort of sizes I want. And then the really important thing is you can't use this cold press soap straight away. It needs to cure for 4 to 6 weeks. I always leave it 6 weeks. And what I've got here is an old oven rack with a piece of greaseproof paper on the top. I did wipe the oven rack over with some 99% alcohol to make sure that that was clean. And obviously it's not used in my oven. It's only used for this sort of thing. And all I'm doing is laying my soap onto that. And then I will cover that with a towel, leave it somewhere nice and cool, and let that cure for 6 weeks. I'll write on the date I made it and the date of 6 weeks so I know when it can be used. I'll wrap it exactly the same way as this and store it in the cupboard in the bathroom. I absolutely know it has come as a shock to a lot of people that these are in place. They just thought they could go ahead, make it, sell it at craft fairs and things like that, and all's good. But you can't. So make sure you do your own research, check it all out. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Oh, my room smells so lovely. Don't forget to boot the like button if you found this to be useful, and hit that subscribe button for lots of other crafting. Take care, enjoy your crafting. Bye.